Dr. Lorne had never been unsettled by patients before. At the small psychiatric clinic on the edge of town, he had seen a spectrum of behaviors, from melancholic to erratic. But the moment a new patient arrived that Thursday morning, something in the air shifted. The patient, a man in his early 40s named Marcus, presented neatly dressed, calm and cooperative. His voice was measured, and he answered every question with a precision that suggested rehearsal. Yet there was a subtle tension in his eyes, a flicker that passed too quickly for most to notice, like a shadow in a mirror. During the intake session, Marcus described everyday routines in meticulous detail, how he organized his apartment, the exact sequence of his morning habits, the order in which he prepared meals. On the surface, it was harmless, almost boring. But as Dr. Lorne listened, he noticed small contradictions, tiny lapses that suggested layers of concealed behavior. The man was aware of observation, aware of being studied, and he seemed to enjoy it. The clinic itself was quiet that morning, the hum of fluorescent lights and faint clatter from the front desk filling the space. Other patients moved about, absorbed in therapy sessions, unaware of Marcus's presence. Dr. Lorne felt an unease he couldn't rationalize. Something about the man was careful, calculated, every gesture controlled, every detail curated to maintain a facade. And yet, beneath that surface, there was the sense of a lurking instability, something that had not yet revealed itself. By the end of the session, Marcus left with a polite nod, his calm exterior intact, leaving Dr. Lorne alone in the observation room, questioning why his instincts whispered that this patient would not be like the others. In the following days, Marcus returned for his scheduled sessions. Each time he seemed unchanged, polite, controlled, almost meticulous. But Dr. Lorne began to notice patterns that unsettled him. Small inconsistencies in Marcus's recounting of his week, places visited, people met, tasks completed, clashed subtly with information from collateral sources. The contradictions were not blatant. They were easily dismissed as memory lapses. Yet they were frequent enough to suggest something deeper, something intentional. During one session, Marcus casually mentioned leaving a window open in his apartment for fresh air, though previous records confirmed the apartment had no windows facing the street. When Dr. Lorne asked a clarifying question, Marcus smiled faintly, shrugged, and moved on, as though enjoying the question itself. There was no panic, no anxiety, just a controlled, almost playful ambiguity. Lorne began paying closer attention to Marcus's behavior outside the clinic. Surveillance footage from local stores confirmed Marcus's presence at times he claimed to be elsewhere. Social media photos placed him in locations he had denied visiting. Each revelation was small, inconclusive in isolation, yet together they created an impression of careful orchestration. The staff at the clinic commented on the man's politeness and composure, unaware of Dr. Lorne's growing concern. Marcus's calmness was disarming, making it easy for others to dismiss the irregularities. But to Dr. Lorne, each session was a tightrope walk, a measured dance between normalcy and hidden instability. By the end of the week, the unease had grown tangible. Marcus's precise routines, his subtle deceptions, and his almost theatrical composure suggested a mind that thrived on control. Dr. Lorne felt the weight of anticipation. If there was a fracture beneath the surface, it was only a matter of time before it revealed itself, and he was both wary and compelled to witness it. By midweek, Marcus's sessions began to shift in tone. While his demeanor remained composed, his stories grew darker, more detailed, though always presented as if detached observation. He described situations involving strangers, accidents, and small acts of cruelty, all recounted with a clinical calm. Dr. Lorne felt an increasing disquiet. These were not mere hypotheticals. There was an intimacy in Marcus's descriptions that suggested direct experience. One afternoon, Marcus brought a notebook filled with meticulous notes, names, dates, routines, and subtle observations about people he claimed to have encountered. Each entry was precise, almost obsessively organized, yet some passages contained contradictions, like deliberate puzzles. Dr. Lorne couldn't tell whether the inconsistencies were errors or tests, but the effect was unmistakable. The notebook radiated control and calculation, a map of intentions veiled as casual record-keeping. Outside the clinic, the unease extended into the environment. The staff reported small disturbances, items slightly misplaced, doors that had been locked appearing ajar, the faint impression that someone had been observing them. No evidence directly implicated Marcus, but the timing of these occurrences coincided with his visits. The ambiguity made the fear more potent. Without proof, suspicion became a psychological weight rather than an accusation. Dr. Lorne started arriving early, leaving late, observing Marcus with increasing vigilance. Yet the patient's awareness seemed undiminished. He adapted seamlessly, his calm exterior untouched, almost impervious. The contrast between outward composure and the mounting unease was hypnotic, a slow-burning tension that left the doctor both wary and obsessed. By the end of the week, Marcus's presence dominated Dr. Lorne's thoughts. Every routine, every interaction at the clinic felt overshadowed by the possibility of unseen intentions. The subtle manipulations, the controlled ambiguity, the precise patterns, all hinted at a mind capable of actions the doctor could not yet foresee, a psychological danger that required vigilance but resisted confrontation. The breaking point arrived unexpectedly. Dr. Lorne noticed a pattern in Marcus's notebook that he had previously overlooked, a sequence of dates and locations that coincided with local incidents, minor thefts, unexplained accidents, and reports of harassment. Each event was insignificant on its own, but together they traced a deliberate, calculated path. Dr. Lorne confronted Marcus gently, asking about the correlation. Marcus smiled faintly, tilting his head as though the doctor had uncovered a subtle joke. "Observation," he said simply. "I like to see patterns. It helps me understand people." The calmness in his voice was chilling, a tone devoid of guilt, curiosity substituting for conscience. For the first time, Dr. Lorne saw the man's meticulous composure as a tool, not a habit. Marcus was not merely controlled, he was controlling, orchestrating small disturbances, testing boundaries, mapping human behavior with detached calculation. The realization was slow and terrifying. This was a mind fully aware of its capacity to manipulate, yet outwardly indistinguishable from any other polite patient. Outside the clinic, small events that had seemed coincidental now took on a sinister clarity. Staff who had misplaced items or felt watched were unwitting participants in Marcus's experiment. Dr. Lorne could no longer dismiss the unease as paranoia. It was rooted in tangible, traceable actions. By the end of the day, the clinic had become a psychological minefield. Marcus walked its halls with his usual calm, smiling politely at staff, while Dr. Lorne traced the invisible lines of influence he had woven. The revelation was simple, yet horrifying. The danger was not spectacular or violent. It was subtle, precise, and deliberate, a quiet manipulation that left no evidence, only uncertainty and fear. For Dr. Lorne, the challenge was clear. How do you confront someone whose skill lies in remaining unseen, whose power exists in the shadows of perception? The answer was elusive, the tension suffocating, and the man before him remained perfectly composed, as if daring the world to notice too late. Weeks passed, and Marcus continued his sessions with the same meticulous calm. Officially, nothing in his records warranted intervention beyond standard therapy. He had not committed violent acts, had not confessed to any crime. Yet the invisible traces of his influence lingered in the clinic. The rearranged items, the subtle misdirections, the quiet anxiety among staff. Doctor. Lorne tried to maintain professional detachment, but he found himself reviewing Marcus's notebook late at night, tracing the lines of patterns he had once ignored. The man's observations had extended beyond himself, into the environment, the routines, the perceptions of those around him. Each innocuous-seeming action had a ripple effect, a psychological footprint that was impossible to erase. One afternoon, Marcus mentioned leaving town for a week, citing a distant relative. He smiled politely, collected his belongings, and walked out. The clinic returned to its normal rhythm, yet the tension he had imposed lingered, a residue in the air. Staff unconsciously double-checked doors, adjusted procedures, and watched one another with an unease they could not name. Dr. Lorne understood, perhaps better than anyone else, that Marcus's quiet menace was not in any single action, but in the orchestration of subtle control. He had revealed the fragility of human perception, the ease with which routine and trust could be manipulated without overt force. The realization was sobering. The most unsettling danger often comes not with a bang, but with silence, calculation, and a perfectly maintained composure. Months later, Marcus's name surfaced in local news in a mundane context: attendance at a conference, a small charitable donation. Nothing criminal, nothing alarming to the casual observer. Yet Dr. Lorne remembered the precise way Marcus had smiled, the almost imperceptible pride in his manipulation, and he understood that the man's true power lay in the invisible, the psychologically intangible. The clinic carried on, but those who had glimpsed Marcus's methods would never entirely trust the quiet ones who appeared harmless. And in the shadows of normalcy, Marcus continued his observation, patient and composed, leaving a trail of unease that no one could quantify and no one could prove.